Hello, this is Anthony. Let's walk and talk. You know, um, I like to put out a lot of different content. Yeah, a lot of the content's more of the spiritual nature, more talking about aspects of life, and ways to new ways and different ways to view and approach things in life to help one understand themselves better, as well as to even cope with things in life. But we also do a lot of content on things like ancient history. And I did a video on the cities and the cities that are submerged, continents that are submerged, and how these continents, to me, very clearly indicate that there, is a forgotten history, or history that we're not being told about. But on this journey, there's other aspects as well that don't make a lot of sense when you start looking at things from a common sense perspective. I'm going to give you an example. One of the things to me that is not discussed a whole lot is when you look at ancient cultures and you look at the art that these ancient cultures created. The reason for me that this seems like it's really an undiscussed issue is because after having traveled to a lot of these different sites and after having had the opportunity to view not just these sites, but the art of the civilization at the time, you begin to start to see a common theme. And that common theme revolves around the preciseness and the accuracy of the art. What clearly are different abilities in terms of techniques that were used or mastered, or even in some cases tools or technologies that were used to create the art. Why do I say that? Well, I mean, it's interesting because when we talk about these ancient cultures, we talk a lot about their the stone that they used, for instance. And a lot of these ancient cultures, especially even in the Egyptian, they used stone such as granite, which is a very hard stone. And the problem, and we've talked about this in the past, is that the tools and the technology that we're told that those ancient people had doesn't match up with the abilities of what has been used not only to create buildings but to create art. I'm going to give you some examples. As you begin to look at, say, First Dynasty, and First Dynasty is the oldest period, for instance, in the Egyptian culture, and then they work their way forward. When you start to look at the art of these different dynasties, what you begin to see and understand is that the art is much more precise in the First Dynasty. It's much more accurate. It's much more perfect, for lack of a better word, than you see in later Egyptian cultures. And the problem with that is you would think as a civilization and as a culture and as a society were to evolve, it would only make common sense that their abilities to create art along with architecture and everything else would also evolve. And the problem that you see when you begin to kind of dive down this little rabbit hole is, especially when it comes to that of the Egyptians, is that just is absolutely not the case. The precision and the beauty and the art in the First Dynasty compared to, say, the Fifth or the Seventh Dynasty, it's undeniably different. To give you even a better example, there are statues that are made with granite, and these statues are so polished and precise that scientists decided to put a take an overlay of the face and then have a computer match that overlay just to see what the specifications were. And what the computer program modeled was that the face was perfectly symmetrical, meaning both sides of the face were exactly the same. I think it was up to 1 millimeter of accuracy. You see, and you're going to say, well, why is this important? It's important for a couple of different reasons. First off, as humans, what we societally find attractive is symmetry in an image. So what you consider the most beautiful men or women in the world, their faces are very close on both sides in terms of the symmetry. And the more off the symmetry is, the less that image is considered attractive. And so when you see this in a statue, what you begin to understand and see is that we, from that perspective, are still the same. We're still similar. We find attractive features in the symmetry. The symmetry is the order, not the chaos. So we find the draw in the order rather than the chaos. And again, why it's so important on this, on some of these pieces of art and on these statues, is because having the ability to take one of the hardest stones to work with, and then without any technology creating this image that I'm not even sure, we would have to laser 3D print the image, I think, today to get the same type of accuracy. By doing it by hand would be almost humanly impossible. Yet we continue to pretend and project that these were things that were just done by artisans at the time and they were just very good at their craft. Yet we don't show any of the tools or technology that they had at the time, which very clearly demonstrates that it was not able or capable of doing what we claim it could do. We don't show any of that, and then we generally tend, likely because most of us in life are held to a position of survival, so we don't spend a lot of time thinking about other things and using critical thinking skills in order to determine whether a story we're being told or a narrative we're being directed to is actually a feasible narrative. So in that is why we don't really question a lot of these things. But here's the problem with that. The problem with it is that when we don't take simple things like art and see the comparison and see the differences over time, you continue to find yourself stuck in a narrative that is being fed to you. And that narrative that is being fed to you with purpose. And only you can decide what that purpose is. Is that purpose control, manipulation? Is that purpose safety and protection? Only you can make that decision. But even outside of architecture, again, when you view things from an artistic perspective, the intricacy of the art over periods of time in periods of a civilization's evolution, they're not the same. Even now, when you look at art today, compared to, say, artists that like Michelangelo and some of those of the Renaissance, can you say that we create those kinds of masterpieces in this day? No, likely not. Why? Because the craft has evolved and we use different types of things for art. We use different types of mediums in order to create art differently. But when you start looking at past civilizations and they're using the same exact mediums, yet in using those mediums, the art ability of the artist doesn't improve, it gets worse. That is when you have to start to question the narrative. I don't know how much time you've had to go down that art rabbit hole or see what art the world has to offer, but here's what I would tell you. If you like to look at beautiful things, if you like to explore history, if you like to explore the world around you, this rabbit hole, it's kind of a fun one to go down. And I certainly encourage you to do it. But what say you? How do you feel about that? Do you feel like the art aspect is similar to just the architecture aspect, or do you see it in a different way? I'm curious. As always, if you enjoy this content, please like, share, and subscribe. I am truly grateful. Until I talk to you again, peace, love, light. I hope you have the most amazing day.